Tonight's story is called Alfred Hitchcock Presents Alfred Hitchcock. Catchy, isn't it? Our story begins with my first job. I was a budding artist and was aching for a job that could use my particular skills in drawing. There was an opening at my local cord company, and I just had to apply. My job was to draw the cords they used to make elevators.
So show me what you can do, kid.
Okay, just like, this. How's that?
You serious? It's perfect. Keep up the great work.
Okay. My reputation as an artist led to a career in filmmaking. And by filmmaking, I don't mean directing. At least, not yet anyway. My debut in cinema began with a job as a title illustrator. Now you see, back when film was silent, you would need a title card every now and again to make sense of the plot. Now of course, every once in a while I would be hired to make the titles for a particularly bad film. Now, a title artist is crucial for messy situations like this one. You see, if a film is a drama, but isn't very good, then you can adjust the dialogue to suit the ridiculousness of the film. With a few title cards, you can turn a melodramatic drama into a hilarious comedy. As I grew in the ranks at the studio, I landed a job as an assistant director. The first film I assistant directed, well, the director was particularly unlikable. Now, I always tried to maintain a good relationship with the cast and crew, but with the director, that wasn't the case. At one point, the star of the picture was at his wit's end with the director. I'm at my wit's end with the director. Well, I suppose I could talk to him. No, you don't understand! I don't want him on set anymore! Oh dear, is it really that serious? Yeah. Well, who'd you have in mind?
He then proceeded to lobby his support behind me to become the new director of the picture.
Maybe a tad nefarious, but who was I to say no? While there are other films that are technically part of my filmography, I must say the first true Hitchcock picture was really The Lodger. The basic plot consisted of a landlady trying to figure out if her lodger was a serial killer. Now, I ran into some problems with this one. Back in the 1920s, and still to a degree to this day, studios were run by something called the star system. Ivor. Now, this is the scene in which you run off into the night, never to be seen again. But, Mr. Hitchcock, how will audiences know that I am not, in fact, Jack the Ripper? Well, they won't, will they? That's quite the point, Ivor. Unacceptable! I request a rewrite! Now, as you can imagine, I wasn't quite satisfied with the amount of power actors were given in the star system. But I'm still proud of this film because the main tension remains for the majority of the film. And that is he the serial killer or not? In the late 20s, cinema was gifted with a slew of new opportunities that came with the invention of sound movies, or as we call them in Hollywood, talkies. My first talkie was a 1929 film called Blackmail. The film was actually meant to be a partial talkie. Back in sound film's infancy, studios were wary about how much sound they would use. The reason for this was how expensive sound film was. So the studios told me only to include sound in the remaining 10 minutes of the film, which would have been the final reel. Despite this being the plan, I shot and edited it as if it were a sound picture. I did this so I could give the studios a side-by-side comparison to coax them into investing more money into the sound distribution version of this film. So the studio agreed to distribute the sound version to many theaters. But the silent version was produced as well for smaller markets. Now, much later, I got a call by an American producer by the name of David O. Selznick. He wanted me to move out to Hollywood to make a film about the Titanic sinking. Now, the film was never made, but it did encourage me to move out to Hollywood to expand my career. My move to Hollywood was purely for the thirst of creative energy and the studio's resources. I didn't care much for the town itself. In 1940, I made my first Hollywood picture. It was called Rebecca. At the time, Selznick had locked me into a contract with him and his studio. So naturally, he produced the film and received an Oscar when it won Best Picture. I myself have never won an Oscar. But the wound is still bare.
Alfred Hitchcock for Rebecca. And the Best Director Oscar goes to John Ford. Leo McCarey. Billy Wilder. Elia Kazan. Alfred Hitchcock. Wait, no, sorry. Billy Wilder again.
In 1955, I made a film called Rear Window. This film was an experiment in working with something that I find crucial in film theory. And that is the element of perspective. The entire film takes place in his house, and as we find out more about his neighbor's suspicious activities, we remain in his house, even though the action is going on across the yard. I did this because it's not about what the murderer did, or how he did it, or if he did it, but it was about if someone can truly know someone, just purely by observing them. In the film Psycho, I experimented with the idea of the audience trying to participate in the protagonist's choices. You see, the character Marion Crane is not a particularly smart character. So as a fugitive, she does not fare very well, with her confused alibi and her disastrous brush with the police officer. These factors make the audience want to advise her on what she did wrong and what she should have said. In order to elicit this feeling from the audience, I often lodge the camera in Marion Crane's eyes, literally seeing things through her point of view. So whenever someone gives her a nasty look, or when the police officer interrogates her, it places the guilt on us. On a side note, many of my previous films have been in color, but with Psycho, I chose to make it black and white, solely not to tick off the censors in the shower scene with the blood going down the drain. By the way, we used chocolate syrup as blood for the shower scene. Just delicious. I've never really been fond of censors, yet they still often challenge me to make more creative choices as far as using suggestion and not literally showing something. Which is almost more gruesome, if you think about it. Our imaginations think of the worst and the best things at the same time. They are both our livelihood and our demise. And that is what I thrive on.